Hello and welcome back to McClaren Performance. Spurs are being Spurs again, and Conte is starting to talk about how he really feels about his players and his team. But along with all that, the real question is, do Spurs just have a loser's mentality? A lot of people might have forgotten by now, but at the start of the season, a lot of the conversation about Spurs was that they're going to be the team to take on Manchester City. With Conte coming in, having a bit of a good season, just before that getting into the top four, this was the season they were going to kick on, really get into things, and Conte, being the winning manager that he is going to take that team forward. I remember at the time, myself thinking that wasn't really going to be the case. I didn't really see any evidence as to why they would suddenly progress so much and be this great team. They'd brought in some players like Richarlison, for example, and with that, a manager in Conte who has won things in the past with other clubs. But I think just looking from the outside, I didn't really think it would happen, and it's nice to be proven right a little bit. They're not doing so well. It looks like they might make top four, but the problems that Spurs have had for so many years now seem to be there all the same. It's kind of come to this boiling point now where Conte is making this massive outburst, this really fascinating press conference, talking about what he really thinks about the team. Because I think it's the case that it's something that was pretty evident from the beginning. The club and the manager are just absolute polar opposites. How they work, what they do, their history also. Spurs are a club that spends well, spends smart. It has a lot of money, but doesn't really have the same as Manchester United, Manchester City. So they want to grow and develop over time. It was Daniel Levy saying recently how happy he was that they have an average signing age of, I think, 23. Kind of shows where they are. And Conte is not that manager. He comes in and he makes a team win. Very similar to Jose Mourinho beforehand, but we all saw how that ended as well. And now the question is whether he's going to get sacked or not. I think everyone's kind of assuming that he's not going to carry on into next season anyway. I think that was an assumption being made before this interview as well. And as I record this, he's technically still in charge. I imagine by the time it gets out, he might not be. So we'll just see how that happens. What I find the most fascinating about the situation is just the interview itself, the press conference. You rarely get such an insight into how a manager is thinking and really an insight into what is going on behind the scenes. Whether that is something that Conte should have done, I'm not really entirely sure. It depends his reading on the players and how they react to that. But you could argue it's something that the club maybe did need to hear and maybe have heard from Conte quite often. I took a few notes of what Conte had said because I think there's some really interesting parts of it. I think a lot has been made of how he's possibly blaming the owner, but I think he's kind of blaming everyone. He's talking about culture, something I'm taught a lot about now as a psychologist. What is culture? What is a winning culture? Seems that Conte is really trying to get to that question himself. Like one of the things he said here, they are used to it here. They don't play for something important. They don't want to play under pressure, under any stress. It's easy this way. So it's clear that he thinks the players don't really want to achieve it, don't want to push themselves to anything beyond, in this case, possibly finishing the top four. And I don't know if it's a question of want or whether they believe they can. Again, it's this question of culture. What are the standards? The standards of actually winning something and believing that is what they should achieve clearly isn't there. And it's something we talked about before, where it's so hard to win something when you haven't won something before. It's so easy to win something when you believe it's your right to win it, but it never seems to be the case for Tottenham. The talk around the club itself, and evidently kind of within the club also, they don't feel like they need to do anything. It's not necessary for them to win. Another really interesting quote: rather disrupt the figure of the manager and to protect the other situation. To blame the manager, to change managers rather than address the actual context, the situation. A manager is a manager. There's much more going on to a club. Much more so than a technical director, also people that work within there. That is what makes a culture, including the players also. What Conte is talking about is nobody's addressing this, not necessarily the people, but the culture, the ideas within it that need to change. And while you can question whether Conte should be saying any of this in public, it's hard to really disagree with him because they do change managers and they do so quite often. They do often blame the manager for what is going on, and yet the results have been the same for many years now. I want to see fire in their eyes, fire in the heart, the right spirit, not just in training, but on the pitch. On the pitch is where you make the difference. It sounds like they don't quite have that togetherness as a team, that desire to really do something, to really achieve something. When they talk about, the fire in the eyes, that real desire, I think everybody wants to win, but I think there's something special when a group of people are in the same direction, also beyond winning, but for a meaning. We also talk about, having proper real set values, but also having a clear narrative as well, real meaning behind what you're doing. And it's a good question. Do Spurs lack that in a lot of ways? What's that story pushing them forward? Why do they need to win? I think Conte is really questioning that. What drive do these players have? Drive does the team as a whole have? Evidently, they don't really have it. They can win games, and I think that's what Conte is saying, is that they're not the most fantastic team in the league, but they're often, you could look at it as a team really that can win a cup, that can win a trophy, especially with Kane up front. It comes down to whether they really want to, and I don't mean want to as in individuals, but want to as a team. What's the reason for this team to come together to want to achieve this, to buy into what the manager's talking about? What Conte touched on a lot as well is not really seeing this environment before. Obviously, he's been at some big clubs before, Chelsea, for example. I'd love to ask him the kind of further question: what is the difference between what you see now and what you see there? What's the difference in the behaviour, in the routines, in the conversations that are being had? What is the difference that makes that team a winning team? What's that difference to Spurs? Why are they not that team? It's clearly something not physical, not tactical, not ability, talent of the players. That's there. It's the drive and the desire, and even me as a psychologist, what makes a team that good? We talk about cohesion and the idea of being together, connected. What is it though? What's that formula to have a winning environment, a winning culture? Conte seems to think and wants to think he can make that happen here, but he's clearly frustrated that he can't change the ideas and the standards of his club, and is almost hitting the self-destruct, as people have said. 10 games left, he says, so we need to do something to get this fight in them for the next 10 games. To him, obviously, this is his last resort to do that. Conte kind of touched on it a bit more. I see selfish players that don't want to help each other and don't put their heart in, and that's what I mean, but I don't think they have that cohesion. I don't think they have that one true aim beyond just winning a game, but something meaningful to work towards that they can all get on board with. Contradict that to Newcastle. Very deep understanding of each other. With Spurs, it seems a bit more corporate and doesn't really have that same desire to it. It's really hard to describe what the exact science of that is, but it's evident that Spurs don't have it. It's evident they have a manager who is used to that, and really interestingly doesn't know how to make that winning environment. A lot of people are pointing the finger at Conte. He's being paid so much money, you should be fixing this, and you have to kind of agree that's his job. He should be doing that, but you have to kind of be sympathetic as well, because it's a big situation to change. And yeah, like you said, you've done better last season. Short-term solutions, they're easy to do. Short-term to get people going and motivated, especially with a new manager, easy. But to do that for the long term, to really build something, I think that's so difficult. So do Spurs have this kind of losers mentality? They don't really have this winning mentality. Do they have this winning culture? I don't think they do. I think they are kind of losers. I think that's true. And I think if a manager calls you out like that, I know you're supposed to have that good relationship with a manager, and I think that's where Conte's fallen down somewhat by cutting that relationship with what he's saying. But react to that. I expect to see that now. Prove him wrong. Everything he's saying, prove him wrong. But it doesn't seem like they're going to do that. It doesn't feel like a team that will do that. It hasn't done that in the past. It's fallen out with the managers that have come in and out, whether they are right or wrong. At some point, the finger does have to be pointed to the team, the culture, the club itself, and whether Conte is right or wrong for doing that, he's definitely done it. From the outside, and of course it's just speculation, it does seem to be the case that they don't have a winning culture, and I think really for two reasons. One is for that communication with each other, that deep understanding of each other and care for each other doesn't really seem to be there across the club as a whole. You can see that in how they treat their managers, apart from one in Pochettino obviously, but also as well I think it's that what I would call kind of purpose. What purpose do they have beyond just being a well-functioning club? The club itself, the players, feel that need to win, or would it just be nice to win something? There's no real standard being set there with that, and no real purpose and meaning beyond just picking up a trophy if we can. That is a big reason as to why Spurs are in the situation that they are in. But yeah, thank you for watching, listening. What do you think about Spurs? Do you think I'm right about my assessment of them? And yeah, I'll see you again next week.